There are two major avenues to growing the reptile industry, and in last week's video we talked about some of the problems with trying to grow the reptile industry by convincing people who already own reptiles to buy even more of them. So for this week we are going to dive into the opposite side of the coin, where we are going to be discussing how can we sustainably convince the public to consider reptile ownership and get more people into keeping reptiles as pets. If we are successful on this, it creates a more economically viable landscape for everybody in the industry. It better protects our ability to keep reptiles in the face of adversarial legislation. And lastly, it allows us to share our love and passion for all of these animals with as many people as possible. Anyways, my name's Steven with Leviathan Snakes, and let's get to it. Using a marketing funnel framework, we can look at the general public and understand the outline that it will take to get them to become advocates for the reptile industry. So the very first stage, the very first thing that we need to do is bring awareness of the reptile industry, of reptile keeping, in a positive light to the general public. This either is going to take a whole lot of money, a whole lot of skill, and probably a whole lot of luck too. So the reason why is the general public is bombarded by marketing signals, marketing advertisements every single second of every single day. So just simply making ads about buying an animal isn't enough to catch their interest and raise awareness for reptile keeping within the general public. Instead, what we need to do is we need to find ways that capture their attention, and there are some proven methods for this. But when it comes to the reptile industry, it's very easy to go the wrong direction and ultimately send a negative signal about the reptile industry. When looking at it from the perspective of the general public who has no experience with the reptile industry, things that can catch their attention is something that is dangerous, something that is sensational, something that is unexpected, or something that sparks their curiosity. And I think that it's way more often that people use the fear and sensationalism in order to grab the public's attention to try to make something go viral. And we see this with like snake biting type videos, where there is a video of a giant python latching out and grabbing an individual, and that video goes viral. But even though this is technically raising awareness about the reptile industry, it's doing it in a way that says that reptiles or snakes are scary and they are dangerous, and therefore that message is that the general public doesn't want to keep them as pets. So even though videos like this tend to do really well and get a lot of views, I think that they damage the reptile industry overall, and that we as a hobby should be avoiding these as much as we can. In a similar vein to this, feeding videos tend to do well for the general public because the general public has a bit of morbid curiosity to see how does a snake eat its prey. But when it's live feeding videos, I think that this sends all sorts of the wrong messages, because the general public doesn't really care about the necessity or the circle of life or the natural order of keeping animals, but instead they see a cute little baby rodent getting eaten by a snake and it turns them off from the hobby. Because even if they understand that that's how it would work in the wild, the fact that people are keeping these animals makes them feel that those people support the idea that animals have to die in order to keep their pet. And it's oftentimes a situation that the general public doesn't want to partake in. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have a video with a snake trying to strike in it, or that there should never be any material to teach people how to feed their ball python. But if the video's primary purpose is sensationalism and it's not education, I don't think that it helps out the hobby at all and pushes people away from trying to keep reptiles as pets. An example of when a reptile breeder successfully appealed to the public without bringing a negative light on the industry was the work that Gen Z Reptiles did by showing that ball python bites were nothing to be afraid of. So it leveraged the sensational, scary aspect of a snake bite and then showed how inconsequential it is, and I feel that this did a really, really good thing for the hobby, because somebody who was on the fence and might have wanted to get a ball python, but they were afraid of getting bit, if they were able to see that there was nothing to be afraid of, it would be more likely that they'd end up getting into the hobby because they knew that it wasn't anything that was going to cause them damage. In a completely different style, I feel that the work that Steve Irwin did by showing all of the amazing species throughout the world really helped an entire generation of people get into the reptile hobby because they got fascinated with the places and animals that he went to. And in the current generation of the reptile hobby, people like Dave Kaufman or Bob Bledsoe of Green Room Pythons do an incredible job with this, because they are able to travel to all of these incredible, amazing, exotic locations and show off the animals that they have there, and this really captures the next generation's interest and sparks their curiosity for reptiles. The third avenue for expanding awareness in the reptile hobby is partnering with celebrities or large influencers in other niches, and if they get into reptiles and show it off to their followers, their fans, it's very likely that there will be some percentage of those people who cross over and get into the reptile hobby because of that influencer. The last and probably most effective way at growing the reptile hobby is through word of mouth marketing. And that is when we have people who are currently in the reptile industry who love the animals so much and have such a good experience with them that they recommend it to all of the people that they know and are friends with. So of those people, there's always going to be a certain percentage who are also interested in reptiles, and we can grow the hobby through this means. But if, as an industry, we are scorning the new people, it's very, very likely that even if they love the reptiles, they might not like the community, and therefore they don't push it out to others. So again, this is why in the previous video we talked about it was so important not to gatekeep the industry. Once somebody in the general public is aware of the reptile hobby, in order to try to make them an advocate, it's important that they start engaging with it. So just simply knowing that people keep pet reptiles isn't enough. Instead, what we have to do is we have to get those people to attend a local reptile show, or that they need to watch reptile videos on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, and hopefully, if things are positive, eventually it will create a situation where their curiosity is piqued and they start thinking that they might want to get a reptile of their own. The next stage is consideration. So once they start asking that question, like, should I get a pet reptile? Often what happens is they will start doing research. And when they're doing the research, I think that this is one kind of decision point that a lot of people fall off and they don't end up getting a reptile because the information that they get is overwhelming. There's so much information about the reptile hobby online, it's hard to understand what is right and what is wrong and what is just more of a matter of opinion and not necessarily you have to do it this way. So at this point in time from our marketing funnel, we have somebody who's interested, but when they start doing research, if they come across people that say that keeping reptiles are so hard and that you shouldn't do it, it's very likely that they will not end up getting a reptile because they don't want to have to go through the problems and trouble with it. In addition, if the community that they meet around these reptiles are not welcoming, if they are toxic, if they attack them for beginner type questions, it very likely is going to result in them not wanting to be part of it. So I think at this point, when people are considering buying their first pet, we should do everything we can as a hobby to support them and make sure that they are successful. Once somebody has done research and they decided that they do want to get a pet reptile, they move into the conversion stage. And the conversion stage is when they are actually trying to make this purchase. So oftentimes, brand new pet keepers don't know about morph market, they don't know about the breeding world, so when they are making their initial purchase, they are looking at places that they are familiar with. So this is something like Petco or PetSmart or another big box pet store. And we, as people who are already in the hobby, know the pros and cons of going to a place like this, but objectively, it is convenient for the brand new snake keeper. The problem with big box pet stores is often the employees aren't actually versed in keeping reptiles, and any information that they have was obtained through a quick Google search, just like the new pet keeper could have done. And because of this, if there are issues, oftentimes the big box pet stores can't actually support that person and that animal. In addition, the animals that are sold at big box pet stores are often produced from a reptile farm that hatched out thousands of babies in a single season and then wholesaled all of the stuff that they felt was too inexpensive to make it worth their time. So because of this, these animals have had almost no one-on-one attention, and they often aren't very well handled, and they often haven't had very many meals, and when they are at these pet stores, it is not uncommon for them to be completely malnourished, and people will often go to these big box pet stores and purchase these animals in an attempt to rescue them, but this only supports the practices that we don't want to have happening in the reptile industry. A different route that will have a far greater success rate is if the initial brand new pet keeper goes to a local reptile show and buys from a vendor that they click with there. Because when they buy from an individual breeder that produced the animal, they're going to have way more information, and that breeder is far more vested in making sure that that animal is perfect for that customer. So if there is issues, that breeder is going to be able to support the customer in ways that a big box pet store never would have. And if more people have successful first pets, it is more likely that they stay in the hobby, and it's more likely that they will talk about the hobby to all of their friends and family. And that brings us to the last stage, and that is the advocacy stage. So the advocacy stage is when somebody has such a good experience that they start talking about it with everybody that they know. So what I think we can do as a hobby for this is better identify which animals are going to make the best pets, not simply given the price, but based off of their temperament, based off of their ability to feed, and whether or not they are established in pet style enclosures or if they are established in racks. Because there's nothing wrong with selling an animal that was established in a rack, but if the fact that it was established in a rack means that it won't eat very well in a pet style enclosure, that animal isn't best suited to go to a pet home. Instead, it should go to a breeder home. And if we are better able to align the animals with the customer, we can give a better customer experience and hopefully create more advocates for the reptile hobby. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next week.